Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Roker Report podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav back for the preview show. We said we'd get back into the swing of things and we sort of have, I guess, because Mr. Preview's with me tonight. Hey Chris.
Good evening, Gavin.
Mr. Preview's your new nickname.
I'll take it. I've been called with it.
Preview because we are playing Fulham this weekend. Premier League Fulham, who are doing really well, flying high in the table after their promotion from the Championship. How are you feeling about it? Because I'm very relaxed. I'm a bit weirded out by how relaxed I am. I'm normally not really sure what to make of it when it comes to the FA Cup, but I'm pretty chill.
Yeah, we ended the last pod talking about it, didn't it? And I was wondering whether I'd get a little bit of cup fever, 50 years since we won it and all that sort of stuff. Are we going to go on a cup run? And I'm not. If I'm honest with you, I really want to be. I really want to kind of go, the FA Cup. But the way I see it is it's a free hit, and which is a good thing. But there's part of us just thinks we were really good against Middlesbrough. And it's just a bit, I just really wanted to follow up with a good win in the Championship.
Yeah, so, I get that. I think I'd rather be playing in the league because, we feel like we're on a good bit of form at the minute. And the other thing is as well is that when you do sort of hit your stride, you want to be playing every couple of days, don't you? Not having to wait with a cap. So we didn't have a midweek game obviously after the Borough game, so we're having to wait a little bit to get back into the swing of things in the Championship. But I get you. I'm with you there. Maybe Fulham feel the same, to be fair, because they've lost their last two in the league. So maybe they're thinking the same, because of their league position, they would probably rather be playing a team in the Prem and they're not. So it could be an interesting game in that sense, really, because it might be a case of who wants it more, right? It might just be a case of who actually wants to go through. Do Fulham still have designs on Europe? Is that a bit of a stretch for them, or are they just thinking we just want to be safe? We don't really care about cups. This is just a pain in the arse for us. It is interesting.
But if you were a Fulham fan and you were seventh in the Premier League table, you're probably thinking, and they've lost their last two as well. You're probably thinking, if you think back to actually Reedy's days where we kind of came up and we did really well, but we dropped off later on in the season. If Fulham fans are thinking, well, we're bound to drop off in the Premier League, maybe finish 10th, 11th, 12th, bit further down mid-table. If that's likely to happen, because you can't see them, because Liverpool are going to hit some form at some point. You probably think Chelsea are going to hit some form at some point, and Fulham are going to probably drop down the table a little bit. And you'd probably love a cup run. If you were a Fulham fan, you'd be thinking, we're in good form, we're playing Sunderland. That's almost, that takes us, we've got Sunderland at home, Championship team, that takes us through to the fifth round. And then you get a decent draw there and you're through the quarter-final. And a team like Fulham, with the way they're playing, I think their fans would be right up for a cup run. It's that type of team who probably look at these things and think we can have a decent run this season.
I don't know what the benchmark is anymore for staying up in the Premier League, because it's been obviously that long since we were there. But they're on 31 points, so they're safe, aren't they? They've got another 17 league games. A couple more wins will probably be enough to actually be safe. So it's weird because I think I sort of touched on this on the last pod. I actually think we're in a similar boat to Fulham in that sense. In that I know we can get promoted, and a lot of fans want us to really push on and go for the playoffs and stuff. But we're basically safe, and I think most of our fans would probably enjoy a cup run too. But at the same time, probably acknowledge they would like a kick on the league. But let's just look at it from that perspective then. We don't feel as though we've got any chance of being in a relegation battle. I think it would take something to seriously go wrong at this stage, right? So, again, it means we go into this with a little bit of, the luxury of having no pressure, I guess. We've got nothing to fear. And the way we're playing at the minute, it's just brilliant to watch. Teams aren't going to want to play us. I think it could be a proper ding-dong, actually, because for our players, and I touched on this, I think I made a point about Ahmad when we were talking to the last pod, players like that, they've got something to prove at this level. Like, they want to show they can play against the likes of Fulham, because when he goes back to Man United, they're going to want to be able to say, well, are you ready for this level or not? So for a bunch of our lads, this is a real chance to prove how good they are. And I'm sure like that won't be the thing at the forefront of their minds. Like, I need to show everybody I'm a Premier League player. But I would certainly like to think the coaches are planting the seed and saying, this is your opportunity to really show what you're made of. So let's go out there and do it. Everything you've been doing in the Championship, do it against this lot.
Couldn't agree with you more the weekend. After the weekend when you said that, because like I said, I was probably feeling a bit more kind of up for the Fulham game after you said that, because it is kind of exciting seeing us play against the likes of Fulham, because it's been said by a few people, and funnily enough, we go back to last season where in League One we were saying we can't wait to see the likes of Jack Clark and Patrick Roberts in the Championship because they'll probably get more time on the ball. And maybe it works again when you go up a level again, that, there's more to it in the Premier League, but actually sometimes they get more time on the ball. It's not all about closing players down, kind of, as soon as they get the ball, they're allowed a little bit of freedom, and then suddenly in the kind of, defenders kind of pick and choose when they make that challenge. And it's exciting if our players have got a little bit more space and time in that final third, to see what they can do, and they haven't just got kind of bruises kind of smashing into the back of them. And probably look at Luke O'Nien actually, since we've got one of them. But yeah, it could be one of those games where actually you've got two footballing sides and they have a go at each other, and we could surprise a few people. It's just like I said, it's more that, we're gathering a bit of momentum in the Championship, and what I don't want is, because Fulham are a good side, and again, it was going back to the Newcastle game. I watched them in that Newcastle game. They were good against Spurs as well. They should have gotten something out of that game. And it's just, if Fulham kind of comfortably beat us, and I'm not saying kind of smash us, I'm not saying 4 or 5-0 or anything like that. I'm just saying if it's just a routine 2-0 win or something for Fulham, I don't want that to kind of knock our morale, because I think the Swansea game was, I think we were playing fantastic, and it was down to that kind of one incident that threw the whole game. Middlesbrough, we were absolutely brilliant again. And what I don't want that momentum to be knocked, because I think even though the Swansea result wasn't what we wanted, there was got a lot of positives to take from that. And then they went in the Middlesbrough game and used them. I just don't want to lose it. My concern is that we get beat. We have a routine defeat, well, in terms of how Fulham see it, and our heads go down a little bit for the next game in the Championship against Millwall.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at their fixtures as well. They play Chelsea after this game, which is obviously their derby. They've just beat them, so it's. I wouldn't say it's like us playing Newcastle, but maybe to Fulham fans it is. So it's a big game, and it's on Friday. So they'll have one eye on that, I think. I don't know whether they'll go full strength or not.
Yeah, but it's what you said. I think every Premier League game for them now is a free hit. It's like, let's see where it takes us. They're not. There's no pressure on them in the Premier League. So the FA Cup is almost, let's go and win something.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the sort of thought process. Because as fans, yes, I would agree. That's totally my thought. It's my thought process now. I want Sunderland to have a cup run. I think we're safe. Why not? Let's make the season exciting and see how far we can go. But I wonder if that's how, like, say, Marco Silva's thought process is, because he's been in the Premier League a few times now, and he's been relegated. He struggled when he was at Everton, so he knows the other side of it. If you do lose momentum, is it, what is more important to Fulham right now? Is it going to Stamford Bridge on Friday night and getting a result at Chelsea, or is it beating Sunderland in the FA Cup 4th round? I mean, he'll probably weigh it up and think, I need to probably save me best players. I think I read that Mitrovic might be injured, which we might know more about as the game approaches. Obviously, we're recording this on Wednesday night. But if Mitrovic is injured, I wouldn't expect him to start. I think they've got a guy in backup who actually scored the other week, didn't he? I totally forgot his name. Carlos Vinicius. He scored. He's the backup to Mitrovic at Fulham. So I imagine he'll start. I looked at the team that they picked when they played Hull in the last round, and they only just beat Hull, by the way. I know it was 2-0 to Fulham, but Fulham got a goal. I think it was Dan James scored in injury time to make it 2-0. And I'm looking at the whole team now, and the team that Hull put out was pretty much second choice. So it wasn't as though they steamrolled Hull, and Hull aren't great, so it's not like they're unbeatable. I think if you remember back to when we were in the Premier League and we were in these sort of situations where we were the Prem team playing maybe a Championship side or a team lower down the leagues, I think your natural inclination is just to make a handful of changes anyways, because you'll have players he wants to give game time to, probably have players who are sort of whinging, maybe angling for moves, who he needs to keep happy. So it's probably an opportunity for him to bring in his squad players, and that's maybe where a team loses the momentum and the natural momentum and balance, because he's not picking the usual 11 that's been winning games in the Premier League. He's picking a team of players who are probably a little bit pissed off to not be playing in the big games. So that's what we've got to take advantage of. And I think in a way that then makes me think Sunderland should go as full strength as possible, because that gives us a bit of an advantage when it comes to the actual who wants it more and who's going to be more up for it on the day. I think, when you look at our squad players, there's a drop off in quality compared to Fulham's, obviously. If we start bringing in the likes of Bennett and Diaku, it's a little bit different to them bringing in, Dan James, for instance, or, Tosin Adebayo at the back. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, but at what point does Tony Mowbray say, well, this becomes a big game? Because is it the competition or is it the opposition? Because if you look at the third round, he brought in the likes of Bennett and he made a couple of other changes. Was that purely based on the fact we were playing Shrewsbury, or was that purely based, or was that because it was the FA Cup? So I think the starting lineup will tell us exactly where Mowbray rates the FA Cup this season on the list of priorities. Because if now we're saying, right, fourth round, it's Fulham, it's a Premier League team away from home, here's where the real stuff starts, and we see our first 11, our strongest 11, then you know how Mowbray thinks about it. But if you see the type of changes that we saw at Shrewsbury, then you know that basically we're just sacking the FA Cup off, basically.
Depends on the conversations he's having with those above him as well. Are they telling him, winning this game could be the difference between signing a player or not? I don't know what the prize money is.
The thing is, it's late January coming into February, and we're in with a sniff of making the playoffs to go up to the Premier League, which, considering where the club was 12 months ago, and football, you can never guarantee anything. I mean, as much as I would not mind at all if we don't go up this season, and the club won't, and Mowbray won't, if it's there on offer, we make a good fist of it and go for it, because you never know when these chances are going to come round again. We might, we might end up doing an Ipswich and spending the next 5 years in mid-table in the Championship. You just never know, what's going to happen. So if we've got a chance of that, you make a fist of it and go for it. And if we're in with a chance, does that mean you just throw the FA Cup out the window and just say, yep, go on, get some game time to some of the lads who we might need later on in the season in the Championship?
Yeah, I think Dennis Serkin's been back training this week, so he's going to be naturally in contention to start, isn't he? Because we need to get minutes into his legs for the league game. So there's a little bit of that as well, where you're looking at it and you're thinking, we've got players to bring back in who ordinarily would probably start anyways. So Serkin's one of them. Pritchard. Pritchard's another one. Pierre Ekwah, who obviously we've signed now, is another one who might get some minutes, because he's going to want to get him up to speed. He hasn't. I know he's been playing 21s football, but he hasn't played any men's football. And usually in the past, I would have said, cup games are about the best opportunity to bring people like that in. And he's here now. He's part of the squad. I mean, they might think, it's a little bit early. Should we give him half an hour or so? But I imagine we'll see him at some point. So there are decisions to be made in that regard. And I don't think it would weaken us massively. I think that's probably more hinging on Corey Evans, because, if he's out, then you're basically left with Neil and Mishu as the other options. So maybe he's sort of forced into bringing in Ekwah in that sense.
Yeah, I think with Evans, if Evans was out, to be honest, I wouldn't worry about it too much. We've got that many decent options now in the middle. I'd be quite excited, because I said after the weekend, I'd be quite happy to see Neil and Mishu get a good run together, and Mishu get a run of games, just like we talked about Hume, that, these early games, sometimes when you're thrown in, it's a different prospect to when you're going to start like 2 or 3 games off the bounce. And if you're going to do the business, you stay in there. So I think especially with the new signing, I've got no concerns about Evans being out. I like Evans; he's a good option to have. But I think now that we're strengthening the squad, I see, in Mishu having the game that he did against Borough. Earlier in the season, Evans I thought was a kind of a vital kind of cog that we kind of needed in there. And now I'm just seeing Evans as an option already because how some of these players are coming on and progressing, and the new signings. I'm excited to see them. But just quickly, and going off on a tangent a little bit, but I just wanted to ask you, just because we mentioned him, moving forward, because I've seen a few discussions about this, that front three behind Stewart, Clark, Ahmad and Roberts, if you think about it just on paper and watching them play as well, never mind on paper, but those three have been incredible behind Stewart. Do you think Pritchard has a place in the side if those three are fit?
Ooh, tough one, isn't it? No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't personally know. I think the problem with Pritchard is that he's played a lot of football this season and he's actually, I don't want to say he's been poor because he hasn't been poor, but I think he's struggled to have the same level of impact that he had in League One. So I think with Pritchard now, I'm looking at him as more of a squad option where we need him. And I think if he's fit, he will play a lot of football just because there's always going to be injuries. There's always going to be reasons to change things tactically. But I guess the question is he first choice anymore? And I think because he's been out the team now for a little while, we've proven we can deal without him. And that's probably the important thing because he's been such a pivotal player for the last season and a half where there was a time where I couldn't really imagine Sunderland without Pritchard in that side. But I think this year we've maybe seen that he's probably more at this standard or, I think the problem is with Pritchard is that he relies so heavily on his ability to create things from set pieces, corners, and things, and he hasn't been able to do that this year. So he's just not as dangerous. And one thing maybe Ahmad's highlighted, I know they play different positions slightly, but one thing Ahmad's highlighted is that to be a good player at this level, you need to have an end product. And that's just what's missing from Pritchard's game. I think there's elements of his game we do miss though. Like I think the way that he presses from the front, he's great at that. Sometimes when you're in a game where you haven't got a lot of the ball, Pritchard's great for that. And I like the fact how he he is a leader on the pitch. He's always in the ref's ear. You need players like that. So there's definitely a role for him there, but I think we've proven we can do without him, which I actually think that's a good thing. If there's any player, doesn't matter how good they are, if you can show with any player in your squad that you can cope without them, that can only be a good thing because it shows that it shows you're not reliant solely on one or two players. If Ross Stewart is missing, we've seen this season that we can get by without him, and he's so good. So sort of similar with Pritch, I guess, But apart from that, the other thing being that like you said, we've got lots of options.
Well, I think that's the beauty of it now, and I probably need to go back to kind of the Peter Reid promotion days for the last time when basically we had a first 11 who you considered to be our first 11, and then behind that you had a group of players who were just absolutely desperate, like chomping at the bit to get a chance. And as soon as someone's going to get suspended, injured, you've got these players who are desperate to get a chance and show what they can do to then say, well, I should be first choice now. And I reckon that all of the 11, when they get a chance, they'll be so scared about picking injuries up and all this sort of stuff because the person who's going to come in behind them, like Mishu at the weekend, has a blinder. And if they have a blinder, it's almost that Mowbray is in a position where he says, well, how can I drop them after a performance like that? Exactly like the Hume situation. He gets his chance, he waits, he's patient, he gets his chance, and then he's undroppable. And there's quite a few doing that at the minute.
Yeah, nice place to be, isn't it? And I'm glad that we can go into this game and just pressure's off, innit? Just if we get beat, nobody's going to be bothered, really. No. Even if we get tonked, I think we're just going to be we didn't. The reaction will be, Let's focus on the league.
That's my worry though. That's my worry that if we're outplayed and it knocks us a little bit for the next game in the Championship, that's my only concern. I'd want, if we're going to get beat.
Do you not think it's an easy out though? If you do lose, it's a very easy out for. I'm not talking about the fans here. I'm talking about Mowbray. Like, coming away from the game and getting the players back in the zone for the league. I think it's an easy out. It's not like losing to, say, Rotherham or Wigan in our league, where that would be probably morale sapping. It's, you've lost to a Premier League team in the cup. It is what it is, lads. We're just going to move on quickly and then give them a couple of days off, back in training Monday, and they'll have forgot about it by then. I think.
I know what you mean, but I think you're right about the result. But I think a lot of emphasis is going to be put on the performance. If we're just not on it and we have a bad performance, sometimes that can carry over. Like if we go out and we'll be 2-0, but we play well, I won't have a worry about it in the world, because I think, well, we've played well, we're still playing well, don't worry about it, we'll be fine for Millwall. If we just have a stinker, and because it's all about momentum, and if you get if you get those performances and those results will come. If we just have a dip, sometimes it's hard to pick it back up again. So I'd like us to have a decent shot of it and make a decent showing, but like I said, I wouldn't be fussed about the result.
It's a bit like if you think back last season when we lost to Arsenal, we got beat 5-1, but everyone was talking about how good of a show we put on for most of the game, and then we followed that up with 2 wins. We beat Doncaster and we beat Sheff Wed. So
I don't think I've ever been as proud of a 5-1 defeat in my life.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So if you can give a good account of yourself, then I don't think many people are going to be too bothered, to be honest. What's your thoughts for the game, and how do you think that's going to play out? We've talked plenty about it. How do you see come full time? Where do you say we'll be at?
Yeah, I was talking to someone earlier about this, and my gut feeling is it's going to be just like a 2-0 win for Fulham. I just think they're on good form. I think Silver is kind of looking at this as an opportunity to win some silverware. If a team's in form
Pardon
like this, they're not, that's it. They're not going to do anything in the Premier League this season. They're not going to qualify for the Champions League. They're probably going to drop out the European places. I think with the form they're in, they'll be looking at the FA Cup thinking we can win something this season. And I think with it being a free hit for us and not being that fussed, I think I just see a fairly routine 2-0 win for Fulham, to be honest.
I'm gonna be a bit more positive than that. I think we'll win 1-0. I do. I just got a feeling. I don't know why, but
I'd love it.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm just feeling about the draw. I really wanted an exciting draw. We didn't get one.
Yeah. Quickly round on some transfer stuff, and then we'll go into some listener questions. We've got quite a few of those. Pierre Ekwah then's definitely signed. Definitely. I've seen him in a Sunderland strip with a scarf above his head, so he is here. Was originally reported as a loan, but he's signed on a permanent, which was a bit of a surprise to quite a lot of people, and it happened rather quickly. Love how it caught the press off guard. I think it was one of the newspapers in London had said, yes, he is in permanent talks, but still no deal done. And then about 4 hours later, he was on the Sunderland website, haven't signed. So yeah, I'm actually, considering I've not actually seen him play, bar a handful of clips of goals and all the rest of it, I'm really excited about this one. I don't know why. I can't really explain why I'm really excited. I just am.
Yeah, and I'm feeling exactly the same, and because it feels a lot like the Elise deal. It just feels like that it's on that level. And you read what West Ham fans are saying about it, and we heard almost carbon copy the comments that came out of them when Elise joined us as well.
Yeah,
this feeling like why hasn't this kid been given a chance? He's shown potential. He's shown better form than some of the people they've paid big money for. And some people have been calling for him to at least have a place on the bench for the first team, and he's just been given zero opportunities. And there's been a lot kind of pointing fingers at Moyes and all that sort of stuff. But I just feel like that. I feel like, and actually, I was looking at the video of Elise, of how excited he was at him joining, and that made us feel like Elise thinks this fella's a cracking player, and he wanted to play alongside him. That tells you something, doesn't it? That tells a story. But I can't wait to see him play out there. But again, the track record of what we've been doing the last 18 months, 2 years, whatever it's been, you're just excited when a young kid signs for us now. You think, God, he's got to have something about him.
We've touched on this a bit in recent pods and stuff, but like, to me, just say you are Pierre Ekwah. Ordinarily, I would think if you're a young kid coming in from the outside into a pretty hostile competitive environment with lots of experienced players, that can be really tough to get going in. And I think the opposite of Sunderland now, I think it must just be, where these lads turn up and they feel immediately at home because they're made to feel welcome, because the entire environment now is shaped around giving the likes of this lad a chance. So to me, he's probably coming in, he already knows maybe one or two of the players, and I don't think there'll be a big settling in period. I've seen a few people online sort of saying, we need to give him time and stuff, and we do need to give him time. But I just think that the current environment within the squad, the one that Mowbray has built, makes me think that he's going to be able to just hit the ground running. And he's probably dying to play senior football because he's played 23s, 21s football now for 4 years, and he's probably thinking, this is the chance I've been waiting for. Never played a senior game in his life. The opportunity to become a senior player at a club as big as this is huge. And I just think, what a fantastic position to be in.
I'd have him straight on the bench for the Fulham game, because like we've been saying all the way through, if it's a free hit, we haven't got much focus on it. Get him some minutes. Why not? Get him to know the lads. Get him to know the, how we travel, what we do. Even the little bits and pieces, the coach down or how they travel, and getting to know the lads and all that sort of stuff. Get him involved.
Yeah.
If he can get some minutes on the pitch, then that's a bonus. It's interesting as well. You were talking about Mowbray, and I think we've got to give some credit to what looks like that kind of behind the scenes kind of the atmosphere of the club, because I think it was mentioned when he first joined the club that it seemed to be that we had a couple of splits, not kind of splits in the dressing room, but like that group of lads hung about together and didn't really socialise with the rest of them. That one over there did, and you had kind of blocks of players who kind of kept themselves to themselves. And it seems like what Mowbray has done, he's brought all of this together, and they now look like more of a squad than they've looked, well, as a Sunderland squad, who look like they've got that togetherness. I can't remember the last time we had that. I have to go way back. But it looks like they're all in it together now, and I think you've got to give a lot of credit to Mowbray for that.
I think it must be difficult to integrate players, like, anyways, especially foreign players, And to be fair, I watched quite a lot of the behind the scenes videos the club put out, and it does look like, Ahmad, Abdullah Bar, and Mishu are all in a little crew together, and they all sort of travel together. But I've got no problem with that because they're all lads of the similar age. I think that's great. What's important is that the other players in the squad recognise the talent they've got, and they're made to feel part of it. And again, I think we've talked about this before, but it's something that was mentioned about Ahmad, wasn't it? Where, the lads in training had just seen how talented he was, and he became part of the crack in training and stuff. And look at him now; he's thriving. He's 100% part of the team. That makes the job of the other players. They have to look at that example and be like, I want to be in there with those players. I want to be on the pitch like Ahmad is, as quick as Ahmad is. So, I've got no problem. I quite like the idea that we're building a little core of lads from, a lot of them French speaking or French lads. I don't mind that. I think we've obviously looked at the market and think that there's maybe a gap there to exploit. It's got it's got some potential behind it. We're looking at. I think Ekwah has been in the Clairefontaine Academy, which is very famous. Obviously, there's a massive line of French players from over the years who've came from a similar background. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. On the subject of French, young French players, there's two more. And I know we briefly touched on Isaac Lihadji, the Lille winger, but the press reports seem to indicate he's edging closer. By the time this goes out, we might have signed him. Which, I know we've already talked about him, but just another one pretty exciting young French player who's had a bit of a tough probably 6 months or so in Lille. They want rid of him, and he's not gone anywhere yet, so he needs a fresh start. And there's lads here he probably knows or he's aware of, and he can, again, jump straight in and get involved. And maybe, we can introduce him a little bit slower, but another really talented lad. And the one which came up this evening, which somebody I've never heard of, But, another one with an interesting background, Ateef Konaté, who is a Nottingham Forest attacking midfield player who came through at Le Havre, which is where Abdullah Bar came from, of course. Again, don't know much about him. He's a central attacking midfield player. I've seen some highlights of goals he scored for their 21s team and some rakers from long range, some tap-ins. So another sort of box-to-box midfielder, I think. But, I don't know a great deal about him. But the interesting thing about him, Chris, was that, I don't know if you've had a chance to read up on this, but their fans for around about a year now have been calling for him to get a chance. I've seen loads of comments on social media. They want to see him in the team. They want to see him in the team. And it just hasn't happened. He's not been given that opportunity. He's got one appearance in the first team in the league, which was in January last year against Barnsley. So hasn't had really an opportunity to get in that Forest first team. But we know all about Forest. They've got a massive squad of players. They recruited heavily for the Premier League. It's probably pushed him way down the pecking order. Probably not a bad, a little deal for us if it's just a loan, right? Worst thing is that it doesn't work out. We send him back. If he's any good, we might sign him in the summer. So yeah. I'm pretty happy with that one, even though we're pretty well stocked in midfield.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like you said, these kind of links with French players, kind of Kirill's conveyor belt that he's got from here. Lads coming through from from France. I don't know whether his private jet is hopping them across all the time, but it seems like that, like you said, that Lihadji deal. He was left out of a reserve fixture for them, and looks like he's definitely leaving. And it seems like we're in pole position for that one. So I think if that one's done, then it's another wide player, which is an interesting one. We've been talking about Bennett trying to get minutes. We've got another young lad knocking on the door saying, "Hang on a minute, I want to get some minutes as well." And we've got two wide players. It's brilliant for competition, but it's an interesting one for Mowbray, keeping all these young lads happy, isn't it? Because they'll be chomping at the bit to get a chance in this team. So keeping them all patient is going to be another one. The other obvious thing we're talking about predominantly midfielders, and again, we've mentioned it the last couple of weeks, but it's the striker. Everyone's talking about, we haven't really had a solid link with a striker except for Gelhardt at Leeds, which I'm not sure how that's going to go. That's it. That he seems to have been all over the place, linked with everybody. I think there's a lot of clubs looking at him, but he's really been the only strong link in terms of a striker, which is a strange one. You would have thought, back in the day. Look at when Josh Madger left, and we were probably linked with about 10 players within the space of 6 hours on deadline day, and we're desperate for a striker now.
Loose lips, though. In that case, I think people at the club were happy to divulge information to anyone and everyone. When now you look at this, some of these names that are coming out now, though, they're coming out of nowhere. So that's that to me, and it's been the same now for a few transfer windows. I'm just not reading too much into it, because I think they're obviously working very hard on stuff. And I'm sure we've got a number of options in every position. I just think well, it'll happen when it happens. Gelhardt is an interesting one. I know you mentioned him then. I'd forgotten about him, but he's a player that Leeds fans are really, really high on. They think he's great. Yeah. He's got a few options. I think it looked like he was going to go to Wigan. Then that seems to have cooled off, probably because of the crap. But what's the point in sending them there? Into a shit situation. But when you think about it, I know it probably sounds a bit harsh, but it's true, isn't it? If these other options are, like, I think Blackburn are another team who've been linked with him, who are up there with us. Why would you send them to Wigan when you could be playing for a team who are potentially going to get promoted? Makes no sense. So if he's as good as they're saying he is, then he's going to be more than capable of playing in the Championship, isn't he? So I'm pretty cool on that. I know we've talked a couple of times about Ellis Sims and the potential of him maybe coming back. I know that's went a little bit quiet, but it's always going to be in the back burner, isn't it? We've always probably got that option to bring him back, as the window dwindles to the end. But what I am hopeful of is that, this Gelhardt link, if it's true, then it shows that we're not just relying on Sims. I know a lot of people said, is it worth putting all your eggs in one basket with him? Clearly we aren't, if we're looking at other lads too. So I'm, again, pretty cool on it. I think we've got a lot of options. There's probably a number of players that we're in talks with that we've never even heard of. or that we've got no idea we're talking to.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, I think pretty much every player that suddenly announced that Sunderland have signed or were linked with, I've never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, I kind of know who they are. I've seen the in and out of certain teams, or even in League One, you kind of knew who they were. But now we're in the Championship, I haven't got a clue who some of these lads are. But yeah, on the Sims front, I was just thinking about that, and surely, whoever they appoint will look at that squad and think, well, they need more to stay up in the Premier League, and Sims will be shipped out.
Yeah.
Surely.
Yeah. Right, let's fire into some listener questions as well since we've done this, but I did ask on Twitter for people to send us some and we got a hefty response. So what we'll do is we'll try and keep it as short as we can. We'll try and maybe not ramble for too long. Tom SAFC at Thompson 1977, he says, are we better in a 3-5-2 or a 4-2-3-1? And what do you think the best players are for either formation? I mean, have you got a preference on system, Chris? Is there one that you prefer to see Sunderland playing?
You know what it is? I think, sometimes when I watch us play, even when I think, right, well, we've set up with a 4 and we've put 2 in front and we've got like that sort of system, you sometimes see the structure that when we haven't got possession, and it's almost like we line up with 3 centre-backs and Clark drops in anyway. So I think actually it's so fluid that sometimes it looks like a 5 at the back and sometimes it looks like a 4 at the back. And it depends on the situation of the game on actually where the players are on the pitch. But I actually don't think Mowbray has much of a right today. We're going to set up with a proper 4.
I don't think football works like that anymore.
No, I don't. And you see them, sometimes it's hard to work out. And we haven't really got a set, like I said, it's not the old back 4 and 4 in front and 2 midfielders and all that sort of stuff. So I think we're pretty fluid anyway. So yeah, I don't mind what we set up with because I think we do a bit of both.
I think the team now is, you're right, the word fluid is right. I don't think football works like that anymore. You don't go, right, we're playing 3-5-2. Every player's got a different role. So you've just said there, Clark probably has a little bit less defensive responsibility on his side of the pitch than, say, Hume does on the other side. And then you look at Hume, he's turned into this sort of right back / right centre half / right wing back / central midfielder. He's turned, that Joe Cancelo role at Manchester City, really, it's genuinely how he's playing. I mean, against Middlesbrough, he was in the middle of the pitch, probably more than he was out on the right. So every player's got a different role. You've got Ross Stewart, who doesn't play as an out-and-out striker. He's more like a Harry Kane with pace, because he drops into central midfield and then he's up the pitch and then he's everywhere. And that false 9 position, you would never look at Ross Stewart and think he's a false 9, but he probably is. He's a false 9. I don't think it's as rigid as that. It's much more fluid, and we don't seem to stick to a system.
Can I just quickly say, in the last week, you've compared Dan Neil to Gaza and Trey Hume to Cancelo.
Well, not like me to get carried away, is it? Owen Sarah says, is it time Speakman finally got the credit he deserves? That's a big old question, isn't it? I think I'll go first on that one. I think yes is the answer. I was critical of him this time last year when he sacked Lee Johnson and had no plan for it, and then gave Jermaine Defoe a contract when it was probably more to appease the fans than it was to benefit the team, and that played out and went wrong for us. And, I think he has made mistakes, but on the whole, since he came to the club, it's undeniable that everything's got better on the pitch. I looked at it, it was a starting 11 of a team from just before he came in, and the team then compared to now, it's just night and day. And I'm not saying that he deserves all the credit, but at the end of the day, he is the top of the tree when it comes to the football inside the club. He's even above Tony Mowbray. He has more say, more authority, more input than even the head coach does, because that's the structure that the club have put in place. And, you've got to say that in that time, the turnover of players has been huge. We've brought the average age of the squad right down. We got promoted. We're now stabilised in the Championship and playing good football at this level. And, I'm looking at it now and thinking in the next 2 years we should be in the Premier League. And he has got to get some credit for that, because he was appointed to do a job and he's carrying it out. I know a lot of people don't like him. A lot of people think he's a bit of a dick. A lot of people don't like the cut of his jib. I don't care, because he's doing a good job. I mean, I've never spoke the bloke. I've got no idea what he's like, so I can't comment on his personality or anything. But to me, he's doing a fine job.
Yeah, I don't get the criticism, to be honest. I'll point people in the direction of the editorial I did on the 16th of January, where I basically tried to sum it up. Just said, we're talking 4th of December 2020. That's when he was appointed. 1 day later, we were beaten at home by Wigan. Our team was Burge, McLaughlin, Wright, Flanagan, Hume. McFadden came on a sub. Maguire, Ledbetter, Scowen, McGeady, Power, and Will Grigg up front.
Jesus.
I mean, that was the day after he was appointed. And if you look, that all we are is just over 2 years later, and that is only 4 transfer windows. And if you think that first transfer window opened less than 4 weeks after he joined the club, you can really see he's turned that round in 3 transfer windows. Which is it? He's turned that team from that into the one we're watching and the one we're praising at the top end of the Championship in 2 years and 3 transfer windows. I mean, when you look at it like that, that's an incredible turnaround. I made the point in that piece as well that even signing Messi, PSG signing Messi, that's a risk. Anything can go wrong with a transfer. He doesn't get on with the players, or
look at Ronaldo back to Man U.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, any transfer can go wrong. You take a risk with every transfer, but to get so many of them right, like he has, and don't get us wrong, every person who signs a player, footballers for a club, is going to get it wrong at some point, 100%. But to get so many of the decisions he's made right, including 2 managerial changes in the space of 2 years, one forced upon him and the other one by choice. I mean, and people say about Alex Neil, it was Alex Neil who did the business. Absolutely, Alex Neil was fantastic doing the business in League One, but it was still Speakman who appointed him and the club who appointed him. So, I don't know where the criticism comes. I think that turnaround in 2 years is incredible.
Yeah, I think it's probably important though to acknowledge the input of others. Obviously the managers we've had in that time, Stuart Harvey, who's obviously so crucial behind the scenes when it comes to transfers. But to me, he put that team together. He was given the remit to build a footballing infrastructure behind the scenes that sets us up for the long term. And I can't say enough about him.
On that though, if it went horribly wrong, everyone would be calling for his head. So it's right that because it goes right, he gets some credit for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question is from Kingy, Paul King, 73. He says, do you think if we get promoted, we stand any chance of Ahmad on a permanent? No. No. As much as I would love to sign Ahmad on a permanent, he's going to cost an awful lot of money to get out of that Man U contract, unfortunately. I don't think it's a case, because Kingy says, he loves it here. I'm sure he does, but, I don't think we're going to be spending that amount of money on anybody anytime soon, because when you cost Manchester United 40 million euros before you've even really done anything at senior level, I think he'd had a handful of appearances in Italy and that's about it, and then you improve at the rate he has, they're going to want to see a big return on him if they do sell him. I think what's more likely to happen is he's going to be part of their first team squad, and that was the aim of this. Send him to Sunderland. He goes there, he scores goals, he gets assists, he becomes a far better player. He comes back to Manchester United ready for the first team. And I think there's no doubt in my mind that's what's going to happen here. It's going to take, some drop-off in form from him if that's not going to happen, because what's he got ahead of him really at Man U, I know they've got Anthony, who they paid €100 million for, but I've watched him a fair bit this season and I couldn't say he was better than Ahmad, if I'm honest. And that's been truthful. And I think even the Man U fans, aren't particularly sold on him. So I'm not saying he's going to be going into Man U's team and a total world beater playing for a team in the Champions League, but I do think there's a place for him in that squad and he will play games. So no.
Well, I'm going to agree with you on the no, because it's just purely because of the price tag. But on the going back to Manchester United and being a Manchester United player, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Ahmad's quite at that level. I think he's fantastic. I love him. I think he's a brilliant player, but I don't think he's at that level. And don't get us wrong, the Anthony thing, he's not that good. Basically, Ahmad is about at his level, but I'm not sure he's a Manchester United player either. I don't think Ahmad's good enough to spend kind of the next 3 or 4 years at Manchester United. I think they'll try and recoup. They're going to use us basically to get him playing the football that he can, and to put the biggest price tag on him. And I think they'll sell him in the summer.
I think the other thing they could probably do with him is maybe just loan him to a Premier League team, maybe a team coming up from the Championship who would happily give him 30 games in the Premier League, and then I think that's probably more likely. What we forget is he's only been there 2 years at Man U. They signed him in the January transfer window in 2021, so he's still very young. And I think, to be honest, I think they having seen how it went for him at Rangers, which wasn't particularly great, they probably weren't expecting him to do as well as he has. I certainly wasn't. I mean, we mentioned this before. Mowbray's first game against Rotherham, Ahmad wasn't even in the 18. He didn't even make the bench. So he's rapidly kicked on, and they will be looking at that and they'll be thinking, in the right environment, he is a world beater.
But just on that, it was a good point you made there. Actually, he could be kind of our Johnny Evans, where he plays for this season, and if we do manage to go up, you wouldn't be surprised if we loaned him again in the Premier League.
No. So I don't think he'll ever sign for us permanent. I think even, just the money, I don't think this football club's ever going to spend big again. It'll always be about spending wisely, and I'm happy with that. If it's, even when you're in the Premier League, you've still got to be clever. So Darren Burke asks, do you think the Sims ship has sailed now? Do you think that's finished with? I'll let you answer that one. I don't know. Do you think that could happen? Is Darren suggesting that, because we're looking at other targets, maybe we've looked past Ellis Sims?
No, I think once they get, it depends when they appoint a new manager, because I think it'll be up to that new manager. So I don't know where they are on how long they're going to take doing that. But I'm fairly certain that there's only less than a week to go till the window shuts. That if they appoint a new manager, they'll decide that Sims probably needs to go and they need someone better. But it depends if they're able to bring someone in before the deadline, then Sims is going to be straight out the door. And if we're happy to leave it late, because if you think we've only got Fulham and then we've got another week till Millwall, so the pressure's not on us to go out and to buy one tomorrow. We're not desperate to buy one before the Fulham game we'll get one before the deadline. If we want to leave it late, if none of the other targets come off and Sims leaves late, then we'll be in for him. So it depends on a lot of things. I think there's a lot of things going on with Everton and us, and I think it's all about timing.
Yeah. Alex at Spezial73 asks, what areas do you think we need to strengthen before the deadline? Anyone you'd move out? I know we've talked about a couple of these things. I think, any options in attack midfield would be great, just to give us plenty of those. I think, if Lihadji comes in, if Konaté comes in, I'd be happy with that, because we touched on this before, we've got a front three there behind Stewart, which is starting to become established. So, any other players in backup who can give competition, I'm happy with. But I think, other than the ones we've talked about, we do need a striker. Looks like we're going to bring one in, just to know who. The other place I would probably like to see us bring somebody in is at centre half, because I think I've got a feeling Bailey Wright will go. He's on about who might go out. I still think Bailey Wright will go, and I think we'll bring somebody else in. There's been murmurings of Charlie Cresswell from Leeds. I imagine we're looking at a number of players, but there's a reason Bailey Wright's being linked with clubs, and I think I've talked about this a few times recently. I think it's time for him to go, but only if we can bring somebody in. Other than him, Leon Diaku, probably on loan. If we're bringing in attacking midfielders, I can see him going somewhere. He's got to be playing football at some point, and it's not going to happen at Sunderland.
Yeah, I think Diaku might leave. The Bailey Wright one, I can see where you're coming from with the rumours that are going around, but I still think he'll be here until the summer. I think he'll leave in the summer, and it'll kind of be a handshake and thank you very much for your service. He came on the other day. He came on against Middlesbrough. He's still getting minutes. We've got injuries. We're picking up injuries. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed till the summer.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions on the right back position. Caleb's asked, where's Gucci's position when fit? He's maybe more of a utility player, but his usual positions are now filled by specialists. I mean, we talked about this on the last one, didn't we? Where do we see him slotting in when fit? What I will point to before you answer, Chris, is that this time last year, he nearly signed for Shrewsbury in League One. And that potential move to Shrewsbury, well, yeah, it was him and Flanagan, wasn't it? And Flanagan went and he didn't. And after that, he was one of our key players between then and the end of the season. you know. And I'm interested to see how Gooch reacts to how brilliant Hume's been, because Hume's now undoubtedly, and we've had a question about this, Mike at Perichin said how mint is Try Hume. Try Hume is undoubtedly our best right back, our first choice right
question?
back. Yeah, how mint is Try Hume? That's the question. And, you know, we've talked a lot about him recently. He's been outstanding. But to me, you know, you couldn't possibly put Gooch in ahead of him now. There's no way. And Lyndon Gooch ain't going to be happy sitting on the bench. So it is interesting. Where does he fit in now?
Yeah, well, he just signed a new contract as well in the summer, didn't he? Can't remember how long that was for, but I know he signed.
I think it was a couple of years. I think it was 2 years.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting. But the thing is, it was what I was talking about earlier. When players lose that place in the team, whether it's by injury, suspension, whatever reason, the player who's coming in at the minute just takes their opportunity and runs with it, and it's happening all over the pitch at the minute. And Gooch is going to have to play the same role as Hume did, and just kind of bide his time. And maybe, you know, sometimes when players burst onto the scene like Hume did, sometimes they kind of burst onto the scene, they have a good few months, and then they have a little bit of a dip in form because of the Saturday, Tuesday thing. He's never done this, he's never had that routine at this level before. Maybe he might have a dip, and we might say, right, Lyndon Gooch, when he needs to come back in, give Hume a few games out or something like that. You just never know. I'm sure before the end of the season, Gooch will come in. What's his best position? You know, it's really strange with Lyndon Gooch. He was always that attacking player. I mean, he used to, I think when he first came through, he played behind the striker when he first came through, when he was really young. And I think a couple of times we used him as a striker. And then he had that period under Jack Ross where he was fantastic in that first season in League One, the first half of the season in League One, where he was one of our best players, and he played out wide in an attacking sense. And then he's learned this kind of attacking fullback role, which he's been good in, and he was fantastic at the tail end of last season. So I just think it seems like this attacking fullback role is his best position at the moment. But with Hume playing like he is, he's not going to get in anytime soon.
No, but there's always place for players like that in your squad because he can play so many positions. Yeah. It's a bit like Luke O'Nien. He's you know, you're always going to need him because Gooch can play probably 4 positions in the team. So,
but the other thing as well, because I like the look of Huggins as well.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting now to see, do the club say to have a word with Lyndon Gooch? Is it almost a discussion to say, well, actually we've got other young lads pushing and we want to give them minutes? But you know, Lyndon Gooch is great behind the scenes, and he's kind of good in the dressing room and all that sort of stuff. So there's that aspect that we don't see.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, we've got a couple left, so we might as well read them out. I don't want to leave anybody out. Lou _ SAFC says, does Robert keep the number 10 spot when Pritchard is fit? Has he played 10? Has he sort of played like more like, I don't know. It's a strange position because him and Ahmad just do what they want, don't they?
I was just about to say that exact sentence. They just go where they want and and actually Luke O'Nien said it on commentary the weekend. He said Mowbray just lets them go. He just says, just do your thing. And you would, wouldn't you? You've got players like that. You just say, do your thing. Yeah, we talked about it earlier. I think with these 3 fit in the form that they're in, I don't think Pritchard gets back in.
No. And last but not least, Snell at Snell77 says, realistically, where in the league would you be happy for us to finish?
Wow. That is an interesting one. We talked about, I'm going to stick by what I said at the start of the season, because now we're kind of talking in hindsight now about, we've got the benefit of half a season. But I think with the way we're progressing and the type of team we are and how good we are on our day, I think if we make a good push for the playoffs and we miss out, then, that'll be disappointing. But at the same time, I'll be more than happy with a mid-table position, like I said at the start of the season, just because it's progress. I think we've got young players who've got a year under their belt at this level, which is fantastic. We're moving forward as a club. We would have snapped people's hand off at the start of the season for a mid-table place, so I'm kind of going to stick with that. But some of the football we've played and some of the games we've played in, the drop points are really frustrating at times, and you just think some of those games, and if Stewart had been fit, there is that frustration about this season that it could have been something really special if we don't end up kind of making the playoffs. But yeah, I think a mid-table, let's say above 12th, I'd be kind of comfortable with that.
I think I actually pit consistency and performances above league position in this instance. So, if we finish 10th or 11th, but the football and the results have been what they've been like, up to this point, then you'd have no real concern, would you, or arguments? You'd just be like, well, this season's been really enjoyable. We've won more than we've lost. We've played really good football. We've scored really good goals. I'd be over the moon with that. But if it's a case where, we win our next 3 or 4 games and we are sort of top end of the playoff spots, and then we see a drop off in results, because, the other thing playing at the back of my mind is the Blackburn fans told us when we appointed Tony Mowbray that everything's great till February and then all of a sudden it drops. And I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but if it's a trait of his, you never know, do you? And then we could be sat in April, May time going, we were good enough at the end of January at that point to finish in the playoffs, and we didn't capitalise on it. We didn't play well enough. So I think it's a bit early to say, really. But for me, I just want to say the consistency that we've seen. We've certainly since the World Cup, I just feel like we were talking about this team's a good team, and now I'm thinking we're actually a lot better than people give us credit for, and it's about, can we keep hitting that level? But I think it's a bit too early to say what I'll really be up for. I think, if we lost in the playoff final, I'm still going to be devastated.
Yeah. If you look back at stats though, that it's pretty rare for clubs to jump up from League One and finish in the top 6 in the Championship. It's really, it doesn't
I don't think it's been done very often, has it?
I think Luton who did it recently? But apart from that, it's not something that happens year on year. So to do what we've done, I mean, you look at the teams struggling. I mean, Wigan, it's Wigan obviously who we came up with, and
Rotherham.
Yes. So I mean, they're both struggling down the bottom. They're in the bottom 5, and you see what we're doing, and we're pushing for the top 6. Okay, you can argue that we're different sized clubs, but we finished below them last season. So the stride that we've taken, people, you've got to remember how big that is.
Yeah,
and it's easy to forget when you're trying to talk about finishing in the playoffs, but it's a massive leap we've taken this season. And as you said, as long as you can see progress, then you're quite happy with it.
Yep. Well, thanks everybody who sent questions in. We might do this more often if we do these sort of off-the-cuff preview shows where we don't plan a single thing and need your help for content. Cheers to the listeners for tuning in. Cheers to Chris, as always, for joining us. Cheers, mate.
No bother.
And make sure you check out rokerreport.sbnation.com. Leading up to the game, we'll have all the usual build-up. Chris's preview that only 3 people read, as he says every week. And all that other good stuff coming up. Catch you all later. Cheers.